I'm Liz. I'm Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, and I'm I come from Wacomiacong on Manitoulin Island, and I am very fortunate to be doing some work in the field of education. Have been doing this kind of work actually all of my life, and really welcome the opportunity to tell stories, to share stories, to help people by bridging understanding. Building relationships is so really crucial, and especially in this time of masks and hand sanitizer, social distancing. Just so you know, this is my family, so we're all in the same bubble, and I'm really thankful that my family has always supported this work. My friend Kathy has watched these guys grow up, so it's pretty cool that we've had a relationship for that long. So, as you can see here on the table, we have quite a bit of things with us. Now, when it's not COVID, we would be doing things like having the opportunity for you to do touch, maybe smell, so actually to smell what we're talking about in terms of the medicines, to actually do some of the quill work and maybe look at some of the storybooks. But for today, at least giving you the chance to see what we have, some of the things that we have that make up what we call the good life, Minoba Badzuin. And so I'm going to start, actually, and I'm going to start by telling you a story about a story that I actually really, really love and appreciate. And one of the things that I share with you as I talk, and then as Michaela takes over and Justin take over, probably one of the most important things about what we share with you today is that we acknowledge there are many different kinds of teachings really right across the land. And what we share with you today are teachings that have been given to us. It's important to acknowledge that teachings here and what we share today might be a little bit different from some of the teachings that other people might be aware of or familiar with and have passed along in their own family. So we honor and acknowledge that that's the reality. So today we're sharing with you some of the ones that we've been blessed to hear about. So what I'm holding in my hand here is actually something that I find to be very important in terms of building relationships, helping people understand. And when you look at this little tiny piece, it's just a show and tell piece, but it has so much meaning behind it. This is a replica, a really small replica of what we call the two-row wampum belt. And the two-row wampum belt is a beautiful story about peace and friendship. That when you look at the white beads of this belt, we would call that really life, and in particular the river of life. And in the middle of this belt, these white beads, we see two rows of purple beads. In the original two-row wampum, you would see that those beads are made from a beautiful purple shell, actually known as wampum, and comes from the water. Very significant, very life-giving, contains lots of medicinal property with it, and so very sacred. And when we look at the creation of that two-row wampum belt between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, the agreement, the original Peace and Friendship Treaty, it was actually a really beautiful story. The one row of purple beads would actually symbolize me and all the beautiful gifts that I've been given by creation to live the good life. My songs, my dances, foods, stories, traditions, anything, cultural practices, anything that make up who I am are with me in my boat in this river of life. And the other row of purple beads wampum beads would actually signify you. And you as the visitor, or you as the settler, you and all of your beautiful songs and stories and ways of knowing and doing that creation gave to you to live the good life. And in this peace and friendship agreement, treaty, we would honor each other. We would go side by side, parallel, in the river of life with all the gifts that we need. And never once would I come to your boat and tell you that yours aren't good enough, or yours are wrong. And never once would you come to mine to say the same to me. We would be respectful, we would be honorful, we would celebrate each other, we would welcome the opportunity for you to share, if you wanted to, with me, and I with you. So the two-row wampum, in a very short story of it, is a beautiful story. It really gives people the opportunity to understand that we can coexist. When you look at those two rows of wampum beads, the purple, they stay the course of going side by side, walking side by side, living side by side. The other beautiful wampum belt that actually was made, Peace and Friendship, that was made very shortly after this one, is this one. And this one here is my other favorite. I have a couple, but these two are the ones that really speak to me, and I love to use them in my storytelling as we share with people. This is the dish with one spoon. And so the purple beads are in the shape of what we would call, looks like a dish. And in the middle, that one line would be indicative of a spoon. And if you were to look at the way that this story was meant, is that all the resources that humanity needs are provided to us in whatever area or territory or region we come from. They are there. And if we're going to live together and honor each other, as we indicated we would in our Peace and Friendship Treaty, we would be mindful of all those resources, and we would use that spoon to take what we need for our family to live the good life, and then we would put it back so that you could take what you need for your family or your community to live the good life. So the two-row wampum belt and the one dish with one spoon, for me, and I share these teachings, this is for me. As a family, it's something that we try really hard to embrace. We falter. Sometimes we have bad days. Sometimes we have bad experiences. Sometimes we have, opportunities for learning. And so we have to really check ourselves. Where do we think about that? What do we think about that? How do we feel about what just happened? And try really hard to get to what we know is the good life. In my family, we use our medicines to ground us. I'm going to talk about those medicines in a few moments. But when we're challenged, one of the things that we've been pretty lucky in my family to hear about are some gifts that we refer to as the 7 grandfather teachings. The 7 grandfathers, in the creation story that I am familiar with, that I have been raised with, are grandfathers that literally came to this little boy who was given a very big responsibility. And they were instructed to give him gifts. And these gifts would help him live a good life. They would help him when he was struggling with things. They would help him when he needed help. They would help him when he was celebrating things. And so these beautiful gifts are things that I try really hard to remind myself when I'm struggling. They're there for us. Love. I would say Zagedowan love is probably one of my favorites, because if we love what is around us, if we love what our experience is, if we do our best to be kind and extend love or goodwill to somebody else, creation is happy. And so love is very important. Truth, to speak the truth. Sometimes it's really hard to do that. Sometimes speaking the truth is uncomfortable, maybe for you or maybe for the audience that you might be speaking to. But if you have love in your heart while you're doing that, it will be okay. Honesty, to be honest with yourself, to be honest with your environment, to be honest with Creator. You know, honesty is something that sometimes is unilateral. It only takes you to be that. And if everybody was in charge of their own honesty, we would see good things. Bravery. Bravery is probably one of the toughest ones that many of us struggle with. I too struggle with bravery. To be brave to face battle. Maybe you have to stand up for something. Maybe you need to be brave and face your own fears, whatever they might be. Maybe you need to be brave in facing past wrongdoings directed at you, past wrongdoings that you were a part of, that you started. So being brave is a pretty challenging one as well. But if we practice love, again, if you love yourself, you will move forward in that, whatever you have to do with bravery. Humility is another grandfather gift to this little boy, and shared with the rest of us, as I've understood in my creation story. And humility is about being able to stay grounded, being able to acknowledge the wonderful gifts that you may have been given, skills that you're really good at, but you do so without doing it in a way that hurts somebody else. So humility, sometimes that too can be hard, especially in a world where someone might be very quick to judge us. And maybe all we have is that for the moment, that skill that we're really good at, or that gift that we're really good at. And maybe for the moment, when somebody is coming at us in a negative way, humility becomes really hard to practice. Wisdom, for sure. The wisdom that as you go through life, you become smart. You become knowledgeable in what you don't want. You might go through a series of bad experiences. You might go through a series of bad relationships. You might go through a series of things that weren't exactly fun and made you feel good. And, or maybe you did go through a whole bunch of things that were really awesome. And what they did, all of those things, was they built character. They built experience for you, and that translates to wisdom. You don't have to be, a gray-haired 70-plus person to be wise. You could be a little one that learns about and honors and shows gentleness as they're looking and exploring a caterpillar. They know to be kind because that's how they're born. That's how babies are born. They're born to be kind and loving and careful, curious, all those things, which can translate to wisdom. So wisdom is something that, when you look on the continuum of what it is, it can mean so many things. And then the last gift the last grandfather that came to this little boy, he gave him the gift of respect. And in today's world, respect is something that must be given and shared to our fellow human being. In terms of going back to these beautiful two-row wampum teachings, wherever you come from, your gifts are with you. Creation gave them to you to live the good life, and to be mindful or respectful of those beautiful gifts. When we look at where we are in 2020, some of the world issues that are going on, the Black Lives Matter movement that is happening, and other unfair or unjust things that are happening across the globe. Certainly, we are living through a historic and unprecedented time of a pandemic known, all of us are experiencing it. And when we look back to over 100 years ago when the last pandemic happened, the learnings that happened, we're looking at today's world. How can we, in my family, here, we share with you, and lots of other families really around our world, how can we be mindful or respectful so that we all walk out of this on the other end smarter, healthier, safer. And so to be respectful, the masks, I wouldn't talk with one on because you might not hear me as clearly, but the moment I come into a place, I know that this is what I need to do because this is what our health professionals are guiding us to do. So to be respectful of life around us, to help us understand, you have your gifts and I have mine. These beautiful grandfather teachings are not always the easiest though. And it's so important to understand as we share with you about those teachings, I'm not imposing them on you in terms of my beliefs. I would ask you to think about them. What do you think about respect, love, bravery, truth, humility, and wisdom? What does it mean to you, and how would you use that when you're relating with people that you come into contact with? So these beautiful gifts that I share with you, we actually have medicine that help us relate to them, help us understand them. I actually went for a walk with one of Kathy's staff to see what the Ermitinger Old Stonehouse National Historic Site has, and I am so heart happy to know that that the steps and the measures that are taken here to tell a true account of some of the history and the beauty of this place known as Bawat-Ting. The Ojibwe people have inhabited this area, this is their traditional land for generations. And we have had access to these beautiful gifts, through the generations. Stories have been told about how we use these gifts. What are they for? How to harvest them, when to harvest them. And so I like to acknowledge Kathy and her staff in doing what they can to make sure that they're sharing a true account of the people of this area and some of the medicine that we have. We have lots of medicine, beautiful stories around all these relatives and the work that they do to help us in life. Lots of different kinds. But I'm going to share with you today 4 of the more common ones actually used probably right across Turtle Island or North America. Sage, sweetgrass, cedar, and tobacco might look differently in different parts of the land. They might grow in abundance in parts of the land. Our area in particular, we're fortunate, all of it grows here in our area. A long, long time ago, we may not have had what we would refer to as tobacco, organic or original leaf tobacco that grows right from the ground, without being processed to look like, the way that we might see tobacco in the form of a cigarette or in the form of a pouch for someone who smokes a pipe, for example, like my dad. The tobacco that he puts into his pipe has beautiful aromas and flavors that have been infused. When we look at the original form of that tobacco, it actually looks very similar to like romaine lettuce, the leaves when it's grown in, and it's really an abundance of it. And what we would do is we would pick it and hang it upside down to dehydrate it or dry it, just as we would with sage. We would do the same thing with sage. We would do the same thing with sweetgrass, and the same with cedar. Mostly because, as you know, if there's moisture in something, it might tend to get moldy. So we need to make sure that we're drying out the products that come from the land that probably have moisture because of dew or rain or other weather elements. So these medicines grow in abundance here in our area, and it makes me happy that we can harvest them. The ones that grow on the ground, of course, we have to harvest in the fall, or in the end of July is when we can start harvesting our sweetgrass. This braid is pretty symbolic of how tall our sweetgrass grows around here in this area. I have seen some braids of sweetgrass, though, probably as tall as me. And my friends and relatives down in Wappo Island, they have an abundance of beautiful, long, beautiful, really healthy sweetgrass. And you see, I had a picture of a friend, and he was literally carrying it like this when they were harvesting it because it was so big and healthy. So these medicines we use and celebrate the use of them quite regularly in my house. This is cedar, and cedar, as I've been taught, and these teachings have been passed down to my children. My dad, I thank him for giving us these teachings, these understandings. Cedar is a relative that we can harvest all year long because it grows on a tree. Now, when you're harvesting in the winter, like us, last winter we got stuck in the snow because, of course, we live in the snow belt, so there was lots of snow last year. You want to, of course, try and get what you can to harvest for your use all year long, if you can. But for us as a family, we also do it seasonally. When the leaves start to change color, we go out and we harvest. And we do that because, as we've been taught in my family, we would take a cedar bough like this, a small one, and we would put it above the entrance of each doorway or windowway in our home. So our windows, our bedrooms, our front door, our back door. And the reason for that is for protection, for healing. Cedar has a lot of medicinal properties. If I was, for example, not feeling well, cold and flu season, what I've been taught is we take cedar, we put it in a pot and we boil it and we let it steep and we make cedar tea. There's lots of medicinal properties in that. You can also smudge with it. And some people might be familiar with smudging. Some people might not be. This is an abalone shell. I use this one for storytelling because my dad gave it to me, and I really want it to be something that I can pass down to my children. And so we take care of it. We don't actually use it for smudging. This was our storytelling one. But the one I have at home in my bathroom, it's every day it has smudge going. And so we might use cedar, put a little bit of cedar in there. One of the teachings I've recently heard about cedar, and I think it's a really cool one, is for anybody who has had the opportunity to have a campfire or a camp stove and you put a cedar log on the fire, or maybe you hear the crackling of the cedar that the cedar makes. The teaching I heard recently from a very good friend and someone I highly respect in terms of cultural knowledge indicates that crackling noise is kind of like a, hey, we need your attention. Hey, we need your help to our helpers and our ancestors. So when we're praying, it's kind of like an attention getter. Stop what you're doing. Come and help us. We need you to come and help us. So that was a teaching that he shared just recently, and I really liked it. But what we do in our house is we smudge. Smudging is literally taking the medicine and lighting it on fire. Long time ago, we would use flint, a fire starter, to do that. In this day and age, good old matches or a lighter is something that is in abundance and easy to access. And we light it. And the smoke that burns, we would actually take the smoke and go over ourselves with it. Some people smudge by taking the smoke and bringing it to their heart. Some people smudge and bring it to their eyes, to their mouth, their ears, and their whole being. Some people like to breathe it in. What I've been taught is that if you can smell it, wherever you are in the room, you can smell it. It's there doing what it's supposed to be doing. And the other thing that I've been taught is it's okay to touch your medicine. These are your relatives. It's okay to touch your relatives in this way of prayer, of asking for help, of, some people I have heard say you don't touch the medicines, you don't touch those relatives. My teaching is that it's okay to do so. When you need that help, that's what they're there for. And so sometimes when I'm getting ready to do a presentation and I have nerves in my belly and I'm feeling a little bit anxious, I might actually hold some of that medicine with me. It might just be in my hand like this. I've had occasion where I've taken a little tiny piece of cedar and I've held it in my mouth. The belief that you have around the use of medicine is the sacred part. It's your relationship with that medicine and how you use it, how you acknowledge it. When my girls and I go to harvest it, literally we take our tobacco. Okay, so this is the tobacco that Kathy gave to me in tobacco tie form. Here is some loose tobacco, like the tobacco that I would buy at a store in a pouch. Okay, literally what we do when we're approaching that medicine that we're going to harvest, so cedar for example, we would put our tobacco down at the base of that plant, that tree, that life. And we would speak to it. We would ask, we would state our intentions. How come I'm asking you to come and help me? What I need you to bring to my family, what I need you to bring to my house. When I'm making the cedar tea, if I am making the cedar tea, as I prepare all the ingredients and put the water in the pot and I'm getting ready to break up the pieces of cedar, I need to talk to that relative and tell them, you know what, Cassidy has a headache. She doesn't feel very good. Please come and help her. Come and be with her. Alleviate that. And so these beliefs are that. And the best way, I guess I could say, to share that with you is to have you think about, is there something that somebody gave you, something that you have that you feel so strongly about? Maybe a good luck charm that your nana or your grandma or somebody, an auntie, gave it to you. You carry it with you everywhere because you know you need that with you. Maybe you play sports, and when you're getting dressed, maybe you play hockey. When you get dressed, you always do your right side first and then your left side. And if you were to change it, that would mess everything up. You have a ritual, you have a practice that you believe in so strongly. That's what I share with you about our medicines. Sage is definitely something that feels good to smell, feels good to smudge with, to harvest it. In our area, the plants are probably about this big. Depending on what kind you get, they can get this big, like out in the garden. This sage actually comes from the West. I had a gift sent to me from some relatives in the Southwest. I have an auntie who harvests sage for us in the prairies. She can go out and harvest a whole year's worth in a really short period of time because it grows in such abundance over there. They don't have cedar trees in abundance in her area, so we trade. So my girls and I went out and picked cedar for her. It got shipped in the mail. Our sage is on the way, shipped in the mail. So we still work together and barter, trade in that way. And then sweetgrass, definitely same thing. I've been taught that sweetgrass is used a lot in terms of kindness. That when we're looking for kindness, we're looking for safety around, offering to people, that we would light sweetgrass in that kindness. Used in education, to share information in a kind way, and to have it burn. Beautiful, sweet aroma, beautiful smell. What's really cool driving in our area here around Sault Ste. Marie is where it grows. It grows in such abundance. So the tobacco would actually precede everything in terms of how we would offer that. And when I was talking to the staff member showing me the garden here at Ermitinger, he was talking about, how before we didn't have access to tobacco. It was something that would have been introduced to us. What did we use? And I said, well, I've been taught we've used things like kinnikinnick, shkatogan, another word in today's world, chaga. Those pieces from the land carry great medicinal properties with them. And all of this is information that certainly is starting to be written down. So you can see in front of Michaela, she's got lots of books there. Those are some of my favorite storytelling books. But we have a lot of authors now, Indigenous scholars, Indigenous knowledge keepers who are actually deciding it's important to write this information down. We come from oral storytelling is a part of what we do from generation to generation to generation, maybe in a family or from family to family or community to community. That's how these pieces of knowledge have been kept. Now, in today's world, we're starting to see the importance of writing it down. There was a time in our history as Canadians and really as North Americans where the residential school system threatened the ability to understand these in the way that I've shared with you today. There was policy in place for cultural genocide, and I'm very fortunate, many of us are very fortunate to be in a time that none of it was actually lost. It may have fell to the wayside. It may have gone into hiding because at a period of time it did. But it is now out, and we have beautiful learning opportunities like this today. We have schools that talk about it here in our own community of Sault Ste. Marie. I'm thankful for Algoma District School Board, the French Board, and Huron-Superior in their attempts to ensure good information is taught, true information is taught. We have a pretty strong partnership with them at Algoma District School Board, Huron-Superior, and the French-speaking for what we would call Education Day at Algoma University. We would have all the grade six students in the community come to us and learn about things like this, learn about Canada's true history around residential schools. And it would be done in a way that was done with those 7 grandfather teachings. Love and kindness at the foundation of it all. So I'm going to thank you for listening to me, and really do invite you, if something I've shared with you has spiked your curiosity, if something, you'd like to learn more or know more, Kathy at Ermitanger knows how to get a hold of me. And if I can't help you with something, I can definitely point you in the direction on gaining some clarity or more information about some of the things that we're going to share with you today.